Did you know that the shape of airplane windows has a direct connection to the safety of modern air travel? Every time you board a plane and look out the window, you probably take that oval, rounded shape for granted. But what if I told you that in the early days of commercial aviation, airplane windows used to be square? And what if I told you that this design choice led to multiple tragic accidents that changed the entire aviation industry forever? The story of why airplane windows are round is not just about aesthetics or comfort. It is about engineering, physics, and lessons learned through painful disasters. When commercial air travel first began to grow in the 1940s and 1950s, airlines were racing to build faster, bigger, and more modern airplanes. Among the most revolutionary designs was the de Havilland Comet, the world's first commercial jetliner. Built in the United Kingdom, the Comet was sleek, powerful, and unlike anything passengers had ever seen before. It was faster than propeller-driven planes, it could fly at higher altitudes, and it offered an entirely new level of luxury. Passengers could sit in plush seats, sip cocktails, and gaze out of large square windows that made the cabin feel spacious and open. For a while, it seemed like the future of flying had arrived. But then, disaster struck. In the early 1950s, several Comet aircraft suffered catastrophic mid-air breakups. Planes simply disintegrated at cruising altitude, killing everyone on board. Investigators were baffled. At first, they suspected sabotage, turbulence, or even engine problems. But as more comets fell from the sky, it became clear that something was very wrong with the design of the airplane itself. The investigation that followed became one of the most important engineering studies in aviation history. Engineers painstakingly reconstructed wreckage and tested the fuselage under controlled conditions. What they discovered shocked the world. The culprit was not the engines, not the wings, but the windows. Specifically, the square shape of the windows. Here's why. When a plane flies at high altitude, the cabin must be pressurized so passengers can breathe comfortably. At 30,000 feet, the outside air pressure is far too low for humans to survive, so airplanes pump air into the cabin to maintain a safe pressure. This means the fuselage, the outer shell of the plane, experiences constant stress as it expands slightly under pressure during flight. Every time the plane takes off and lands, every cycle of pressurization and depressurization, the metal body of the plane undergoes tiny amounts of strain. Over time, this strain adds up. Now, in an ideal design, this stress is distributed evenly across the surface of the fuselage. But square windows created a fatal flaw: sharp corners. In engineering, sharp corners are weak points because they concentrate stress. Instead of the pressure being spread evenly, the force builds up at the corners of a square. This phenomenon is known as stress concentration. With every flight, microscopic cracks formed at the corners of the Comet's square windows. Over time, these cracks grew larger until eventually, the metal failed catastrophically, ripping the airplane apart in mid-air. The tragedies of the Comet taught the aviation industry a harsh but essential lesson: sharp corners and pressurized cabins do not mix. To solve the problem, designers switched to oval and rounded windows. By curving the edges, stress is distributed more evenly around the frame. There are no corners where cracks can easily form and spread. Rounded windows dramatically reduce the risk of structural failure, making airplanes far safer. This is why every modern passenger plane, from the smallest regional jet to the largest Airbus A380, has round or oval windows. But the story doesn't end there. Round windows are not just safer. They also influence passenger comfort and even aesthetics. For one thing, oval windows provide a smoother view, minimizing optical distortions. They also fit better with the curved shape of the airplane's fuselage. If you tried to install large, flat, square windows on a cylindrical tube, you'd end up with awkward gaps and uneven surfaces. Rounded windows blend seamlessly into the design, both inside and out. There's also a psychological factor. Passengers may not consciously notice it, but rounded shapes tend to feel softer and more natural than sharp, angular ones. Human brains associate curves with comfort and safety. Imagine sitting next to a sharp-edged square hole while hurtling through the sky at 500 miles per hour. It just wouldn't feel right. Interestingly, this principle extends beyond airplanes. You'll find that in many high-pressure vessels like submarines, spacecraft, or even deep-sea diving chambers, designers always avoid square windows. The forces involved in maintaining pressure are simply too dangerous to allow sharp corners. Nature itself demonstrates this lesson. Look at bubbles, water droplets, or even planets. Under pressure, shapes naturally become round because roundness distributes stress evenly. So the next time you look out the window of an airplane, remember that its shape is the result of decades of engineering lessons, hard-earned through tragedy. The passengers of the Comet flights paid the ultimate price, but their legacy is that today, billions of travelers fly safely because engineers learned from those mistakes. The oval window beside you is not just a design choice, it is a life-saving innovation. Of course, you might also wonder, why not make the windows even larger, like the panoramic windows in luxury cars or trains? The reason is once again about safety. The larger the window, the greater the stress it introduces to the fuselage. Airplanes are designed to withstand enormous forces. Turbulence, pressurization cycles, temperature changes, and more. The fuselage must remain strong and airtight. While some modern planes like the Boeing 787 Dreamliner have managed to install larger windows thanks to advanced materials, there will always be limits. Engineers constantly balance passenger experience with safety and structural integrity. The story of airplane windows is a reminder that aviation design is full of compromises. Every detail, no matter how small, has been tested, calculated, and refined through years of trial and error. The rounded shape of your window represents the marriage of physics and practicality. It looks simple, but behind it lies a history of pain, learning, and progress. So why are airplane windows round? Because lives depend on it. The disasters of the early jet age showed that something as seemingly insignificant as the shape of a window could mean the difference between life and death. By rounding the edges, engineers removed the weak points that doomed the Comet. Today, those oval windows symbolize one of the most important lessons in aviation history. Safety comes first, and even the smallest details matter. The next time you're flying high above the clouds, gazing out at the endless blue sky or the glowing lights of a city below, take a moment to appreciate the simple elegance of that round window. It's more than a frame for your view, it's a shield that keeps you safe, a design that embodies decades of human ingenuity, and a reminder that sometimes the smallest changes make the biggest difference. And now, let me ask you, the next time you're on a flight, will you look at your window the same way again? Or will you think about the square windows of the past and the lessons that were learned the hard way?